Drop it.
Hi! Good day everyone! I am your teacher Gar, and in this video, you will learn the Gentile's 2 dimensions taxonomy. The author of Gentile's 2 dimensions taxonomy was Antoinette or Anne Gentile. The one-dimension basis for motor skill classification has the disadvantage of not always capturing the variety of several skills that a professional, of course, must consider when making decisions about training or practice routines. To overcome this limitation, Gentile broadened one-dimension approach by considering 2 general characteristics of skills. Number 1, we have the environmental context in which the person performs the skill, and number 2, the functions of the action characterizing the skills. She then subdivided these 2 characteristics to produce a taxonomy of 16 skill categories. Gentile proposed this taxonomy as a practical guide for physical therapists to use in their clinical practices. The taxonomy various skills categories put distinct demands on the performer, varying in terms of the complexity of skill characteristics. Gentile saw this taxonomy as serving 2 roles for therapists. First, it offers a structured and thorough assessment guide to direct the therapy through the therapeutic phase of assessing the movement issues that characterize patients. Second, the taxonomy provides the basis on which the therapist can systematically select functionally appropriate activities for the patient after having made the evaluation. Gentile created the taxonomy with physical therapy in mind, but it is not limited to that context. The taxonomy is an ideal starting point for recognizing performer demands for a wide range of motor skills. This taxonomy should be appreciated by those interested in the teaching of motor skills. It is an excellent way to become aware of the skill characteristics that distinguish skills from applying to other skills, and it is an excellent guide for developing practice or training routines. Number 1, the environmental context. The first dimension of Gentile's taxonomy is the environmental context in which a person's perform a skill. 2 characteristics are involved in this dimension. We have number 1, the regulatory conditions, and number 2, the inter-trial variability. The first environmental characteristics concerns the regulatory conditions, which are those characteristics of the environmental context that determine, that is, to regulate the movement characteristics of an action. This means that a person's movements must adapt to these specific environmental features to be successful. For example, the surface on which person walks influences the movement a person uses to walk on that surface. Also, for the action of hitting a ball, the size, the shape, and weight of the ball, as well as its speed and spatial location in flight, influence when a person can initiate hitting the ball and what the movement characteristics of the swing must be alike. An important distinction for differentiating motor skill is whether the regulatory conditions during performance are stationary or in motion. Sometimes the regulatory conditions are stationary. This is the case when you walk on a sidewalk or hit a ball of a tee, or a golf ball on a tee is not yet in play. Sometimes the regulatory conditions are in motion. This occurs when you must step into an escalator or hit a pitch ball. In this part of Gentile's taxonomy, we can see the application of the closed and open motor skills categories. Skills for which the regulatory conditions are stationary, which are closed skills, whereas those for which they are in motion are open skills. However, This closed or open distinction is too limiting to capture the wide range of skills that people perform in everyday. Because of this limitation, Gentile added another environmental context characteristics. The second environmental characteristics in the taxonomy is intertrial variability, which refers to whether the regulatory conditions during performance are the same or different from one attempt to perform the skill to another. So we can distinguish motor skills according to whether intertrial variability is absent or present. For example, when a person walks across an uncluttered room, intertrial variability is absent because the regulatory conditions do not change from one step to another or each time a person walks across the room. On the other hand, intertrial variability is present when someone walks across a floor crowded with people, because each step may need to have different characteristics for a walker to avoid colliding
with another or with other people.
The function of the action. The function of the action is the second dimension on which the taxonomy is based. Gentile specified that we could determine the function of an action by deciding whether or not performing a given skill involves moving the body and whether or not performance involves manipulating an object. She viewed these characteristics as parts of two broad action functions: the body orientation and the manipulation.
Number 1, the body orientation.
This refers to the changing or maintaining of body position. Two types of body orientations are important for classifying skills. But some skills such as standing, sitting, or shooting an arrow in an archery require body stability. Other skills require body transport, which means moving from one place to another. Skills such as walking, running, and swimming involve body transport. One point of clarification here is for the skill of riding a moving vehicle. Although the vehicle transports the person from one place to another, the body orientation action function is to maintain the postural body stability. The second type of action function concerns object manipulation. Some motor skills require us to change or maintain the position of an object, such as a ball, a tool, or another person. We perform other skills with no object manipulation. When a person must manipulate an object, the skill increases the complexity and difficulty because the person must do two things at once. First, the person must manipulate the object correctly, and second, he or she must adjust body posture to accommodate for the imbalance created by the object. The 16 skills categories.
The interaction of the 4 environmental context characteristics and the 4 action function characteristics creates 16 skill categories. In this table, it shows the critical characteristics of these 16 categories. Gentile specified that each skill category poses different demands on the performer, with complexity of the skill increasing from the top leftmost category to the bottom rightmost category. Note that in table numbers are included in the taxonomy to label each category. Gentile did not number the categories. The category containing the simplest skills shown in box 1 of the table includes skills in which the environmental context is stationary. There is no intertrial variability, and there is no body transport or object manipulation required. Some examples here are standing and sitting. Skills in the category are comparable to those at the extreme closed skills end of the closed or open skills continuum, and we discussed it earlier. The next step in complexity is for skills in box number 2 of this table, where everything is the same as for skills in box 1, except that the performer must manipulate an object. For example, a person must stand and hold a box. Complexity of skills increases systematically through box 16 of this table, which is the category of the most complex skills. For these skills, the regulatory conditions are in motion and change from one performance to another. The person is manipulating an object and the person is moving. Many sports skills fall into this category. One example is running to catch a hit ball in baseball. Skills in this category are comparable to those at the extreme open skills and of the closed or open skills continuum.
Practical application of the taxonomy. Gentile proposed that the taxonomy has practical value for therapists and teachers because they can use it in two ways. First, it can be a useful guide for evaluation of movement capabilities and limitations. The therapists and teachers can evaluate deficits by systematically altering the environmental context and or the action functions to identify skill performance characteristics that pose the difficulty for an individual. Contextual versus action function difficulties suggest different types of problems. By identifying the specific characteristics limiting performance, the therapist or the teacher can determine what he or she needs to do to help the person improve his or her performance capabilities. After the professional assesses performance problems, the taxonomy then becomes a valuable tool for systematically selecting a progression of functionally appropriate activities to help persons overcome his or her deficits and increase his or her skill performance capabilities. This is an important feature of the taxonomy because it emphasizes the complementary part of the rehabilitation or skill training process. To assess skill deficits is important, but the effectiveness of the rehabilitation or training protocol depends on the implementation of appropriate activities to achieve functional goals for the patient or the student. In this activity selection process, the therapist or the teacher begins selecting activities related to the taxonomy category in which the person is not capable at first of handling the demands of the skills. Then, the professional can develop a program of rehabilitation or instruction by systematically increasing the complexity of the skill, including in the program. Each taxonomy category provides a guide for selecting appropriate activities to help the person overcome his or her deficits and, of course, achieve the functional goal of the therapy or the training experiences. That ends our discussion for the Gentile's 2 dimensions taxonomy. See you in my next video. God bless and stay safe, everyone.
Drop it!